Hello again. The central insight of Hayek's Cosmos and Taxis is that there are based two different kinds of order that we can observe in human societies: designed orders and spontaneous orders. Some types of orders are designed orders. They spring from a single mind or a single organizational philosophy. The operative logic of a designed order is control through the use of hierarchies. The goals and purposes served by designed orders are the goals and purposes of its designer or designers. The means by which this designer's goals are met are through commands. Firms and corporations are mostly designed orders. This is because someone or some board of directors has planned out the goals of the corporation and most of the means by which the employees of the corporation are going to meet those goals. Now, other types of orders are spontaneous orders. These orders do not spring from a single mind, but instead they arise from a complex series of interactions on the part of many minds with many different goals and purposes and abilities. Now, they're still orderly because the patterns that these orders produce are often predictable in a sort of general sense, and this is so despite the fact that the pattern itself is not the product of anyone's intention or design. Spontaneous orders remain orderly so long as the individuals within it obey some rules of conduct that enable other elements to orient themselves. The rules have to be simple enough for each person to understand what they have to do, but Hayek stresses very much that each element does not need to understand the whole of the order or why the rules are in place for the order to function. They only need to know what rules they should follow as they go about pursuing their own plans of action. Order, therefore, emerges through a pattern of regular interaction. The economy is an excellent example of a spontaneous order. The patterns that emerge from the free interactions of millions of consumers and producers around the world exhibit remarkable regularities. If they didn't, modern civilization would be pretty much impossible. Supply reacts to demand. Shelves are stocked. Prices move to reflect scarcities or abundance. People get what they need, consistent with their ability to produce what other people need. Now, it's not always fair, but it's far from chaotic. Indeed, economists have created a science out of examining its regularities. Other examples of spontaneous orders include language, markets, the internet, traffic, and crowds. If the discipline that holds a designed order together is coercion or the threat of coercion, the discipline of spontaneous order and spontaneous market order is competition or the threat of competition. Now, societies are spontaneous orders, Hayek thinks, because each individual has purposes of their own, plans and aspirations that are not shared by other people in society. To the extent that these plans need to be coordinated with one another, and each of us is permitted to get at least some of what we want, then Hayek thinks spontaneous orders will serve our purposes way better than designed orders. When individuals share an end goal, on the other hand, designed orders may be appropriate, such as when people want a common legal system, a common way of ensuring national defense, a common air quality, and so on and so forth. The advantage of spontaneous orders lies not only in the number of purposes it can simultaneously serve, but also that they can take advantage of knowledge that may not be available to a single mind, or may not be possible for that single mind to process on its own. Hayek believed that treating society as if it were a factory or a military unit, both of which are designed orders, is to, in many ways, impoverish society, diminish human happiness, and unnecessarily limit individual freedom. But if you believe that order can only be achieved through design, then you might mistakenly forego some very useful means of social organization. If we see society as a spontaneous order, then we will have a better understanding of the kinds of rules it requires. The kinds of rules Hayek has in mind are traffic laws. Now, I'm not talking about actual traffic laws. I'm talking about traffic laws as a kind of law. Traffic laws are a kind of law or a kind of rule that don't tell you so much what purposes you should pursue, but how you may pursue your own purposes. Traffic laws enable you to use your own knowledge in service of your own purposes, and Hayek thinks that's the chief advantage of the spontaneous order. If laws are like traffic laws, we also tend to see them as impersonal and even advantageous. We all understand that we can't all go at the same time through the intersection. When the light turns red, we don't get offended that the traffic system has tried to frustrate our plans. Note that this is very much unlike the commands of a designed order, which we know frequently serve purposes different to our own and at the expense of our own. In other words, the commands of a designed order frequently intentionally impede our purposes, rather than ultimately serving to serve our purposes. Now, in practice, Hayek thinks that mandatory insurance, for instance, as a condition of practicing certain activities, like, say, medical practice or driving a car, licensing requirements, safety regulations, and even means-tested welfare programs are consistent with a spontaneous order. While on the other hand, mandatory retirement ages, FDA approvals, and price controls, which all tend to substitute the judgments of other people for our own, are not consistent with the rules of a spontaneous order. Hayek thinks that when the laws frustrate our desires, it should be for impersonal reasons, having to do with maintaining the beneficial nature of the order as a whole. Governments and judges, in other words, should not be in the business of selecting winners and losers, or selecting goals for us to follow. Government's role is to set and modify when necessary the rules that enable all of us to achieve what we want, not tell us what we should want. So at the end of the day, this is what distinguishes free societies from unfree ones. Not the number of restrictions, necessarily, but the type of restrictions and the purposes which they serve.